Welcome back to AI Solutions, the pathway to profit. This is episode 3, and today we're tackling a topic that's frankly a graveyard for corporate ambition. The AI Pilot Purgatory. How to design a project that actually scales. Let's not sugarcoat this. Depending on which analyst report you believe, somewhere between 50 and 85% of AI proofs of concept never make it into production. Think about that. The vast majority of time, money, and data science brainpower spent on these pilots amounts to absolutely nothing. I've seen it dozens of times. A brilliant team builds a beautiful model. It predicts customer churn with 92% accuracy in a Jupyter notebook. High fives all around. Then, crickets. The project stalls and ends up as a slide in a lessons learned presentation. That is AI Pilot Purgatory. It's where promising projects go to die, completely disconnected from operational reality, never delivering a single dollar of real business value. So, if that's the destination we want to avoid, let's explore the map of how so many projects end up there. What I see most often is something I call the science project syndrome. This is where a team gets mesmerized by the elegance of a new technology, focusing all their energy on the how instead of the why. It becomes a solution looking for a problem. You might also find other traps along the way. A lack of genuine executive sponsorship to clear roadblocks. Discovering your data is far messier than anyone admitted, or drastically underestimating the headache of plugging the new tool into your existing aging systems. And perhaps the most subtle trap of all is getting to the end without ever having clearly defined what success actually looks like from a business perspective, not just a technical one. So how do we sidestep those traps? For me, the absolute bedrock principle, the non-negotiable first step, is to begin with the business problem, not the technology. What I often see is a team getting excited and saying something like, "We should build a chatbot." But what I like to see is a subtle but crucial shift in that thinking. You might find it's more powerful to reframe that goal as, for example, we need to reduce our average customer support ticket resolution time by 25%. See the difference? The first is a technology goal. The second is a measurable business outcome. When we frame it this way, we tie our work directly to value from day one. Your chatbot might still be the answer, but maybe a better internal search tool for agents is the real solution. Starting with the problem keeps our options open and ensures we're solving for dollars, not just for datasets. Once you have that solid business problem, the next step I always take is to assemble the right team. What I see work time and again is treating AI not as a data science solo project, but as a true team sport. Your data scientists are brilliant, but they can't operate in a vacuum. You might find it invaluable to bring in a business domain expert who deeply understands the process you're improving. Then get an IT engineer in the room who knows the reality of your systems and can flag integration hurdles from a mile away. I also like to see an end user involved from the start, the person who will ultimately have to trust and adopt this tool. And finally, you need that executive sponsor, the one person with the authority to clear roadblocks and champion the project. When you build this kind of cross-functional A-team, you stop silo thinking in its tracks and build feasibility right into the project's DNA. Now that we have our team, it's time to talk about the fuel for our AI engine, the data. It's an old cliche, but you might find it's never been more true than in AI. Garbage in, garbage out. This is why, before a single line of model code is written, what I always do is a quick but honest data audit. I find it helps to frame it as a simple checklist. First, can we actually get our hands on the data? Is it available and accessible, or is it locked away in some silo? Second, is it clean and relevant to the business problem we just defined? Next, do we have enough of it to train a meaningful model? And finally, a crucial one I always check. Are there any privacy or compliance hurdles, like GDPR, that could stop us in our tracks? You might find that taking a moment to answer these questions honestly is the difference between an engine that roars to life and one that sputters out before it even leaves the garage. All right, we have the team and we have the data. So where do we actually build this pilot? What I see kill a project faster than anything is when it's built entirely on a data scientist's laptop. It's a classic trap. The model works perfectly in that one environment, but it's basically a ship in a bottle, impossible to get out and into the real world. You might find it's far better to design for scale from day one. Now, this doesn't mean over-engineering a giant system. It just means making a few smart, forward-looking choices. What I like to see is the team asking, can we run this on a standard cloud platform? Can we package our code using containerization so it's portable? Thinking through these basic MLOps principles early on prevents you from painting yourself into a technical corner, ensuring your pilot has a clear, low-friction path to production. So the pilot is running. Now, how do we prove it's actually working? What I see happen a lot is the data science team gets excited about technical metrics, like model accuracy. And while a 93% F1 score is great, you might find that number means very little to your executive team. The crucial step here is to translate that technical performance into tangible business value. What I like to do is create a simple success dashboard. This dashboard is a bridge. It connects a metric like model accuracy to a business KPI like cost reduction. So instead of just saying the model is accurate, we say this level of accuracy reduced our manual review time by 20%, saving the company $10,000 this quarter. See the difference? We're not just showing the model is clever, we're proving it creates value. You might find that when you make this translation, the case for scaling your project pretty much writes itself. So now that we have our success metrics defined, it's time to actually run the pilot. What I find is that the most successful teams treat this phase not as a final product launch, but as a controlled experiment. You might find it powerful to frame it with a clear timeline, say 90 days, to test a very specific hypothesis. For example, can this tool reduce manual data entry for a select group of 5 financial analysts? What I like to see is a defined scope with a small group of users and, crucially, a structured feedback loop. This isn't about getting a perfect result. The primary goal is to learn. You're learning about the model's real-world performance, the user experience, and the unforeseen integration headaches. You might find that the insights you gather here are the most valuable outcome of the entire pilot. So, we've run our experiment and gathered the technical learnings. But what I find is the most critical and most often ignored element is the human one. You can build the most elegant AI model in the world, but if the people who are supposed to use it don't trust it or understand it, you might as well have built nothing. You might as well have built nothing. It just becomes a brilliant piece of code collecting digital dust. This is where what I like to see is a proactive change management plan. You might find it's not something you tack on at the end, but something you build from the very start. What I always push for is bringing end users into the design process early, when they have a hand in shaping the tool. It stops being something forced upon them and starts being their tool. You might find that this sense of ownership, combined with clear communication and proper training, is what ultimately builds the trust required for real adoption to happen. Okay, so your pilot was a success. The experiment paid off and your success dashboard is glowing. This is the critical moment, the bridge to production. The first thing I always do is treat this as a formal go, no-go decision, based entirely on those KPIs we defined earlier. If it's a go, the temptation is to launch it for everyone at once. What I find is that this big bang approach is incredibly risky. Instead, what I like to see is a phased rollout plan. You might find it works better to start with one department or perhaps one geographical region. This lets you manage the change, iron out any final integration wrinkles, and build confidence. And remember, launch day isn't the finish line. You might find that the real work begins now. What I always build is a plan for continuous monitoring and periodic retraining, because your data will change, and your model needs to evolve with it. Let's make this real. You might find it helps to look at an actual case. What I saw recently was a large retail company with a brilliant churn prediction model. Technically perfect, but gathering dust. Store managers weren't using it. It just gave them a list of names with a probability score, which isn't actionable. So what I like to do in that situation is recenter the project on a specific business action. We brought the store managers into a workshop and asked, if you knew a customer was at risk, what one or two things could you actually do? You might find that this simple question changes everything. We transformed the output from a confusing score into a simple daily alert. Here are your top 5 at-risk customers and a suggestion for engaging them. By focusing on the human action, they turned a failing science project into a tool that cut customer churn by a measurable 7% in 6 months. So as we bring this conversation to a close, you might find the path out of purgatory isn't about one silver bullet, but a few core principles. What I always start with is that anchor, a real business problem, not a piece of tech. From there, what I like to see is that A team of diverse experts coming together. You might find that once you have the team, you can honestly assess your data readiness and begin designing for scale from day one, not as an afterthought. And woven through it all, what I find truly makes the difference is keeping a relentless focus on that human factor. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. Now that you know how to plan a scalable project, the next big question is how to source it. Join us next time as we explore the build versus buy versus augment decision.